They say your home is your sanctuary, a place of safety and love. But what happens when the place you're supposed to feel safest is the source of your deepest pain? My name is Sophia, and this is the story of how I survived the picture-perfect family everyone envied. I am Sophia, 23 years old, the only daughter of my tyrannical parents. That night, when my jaw cracked under my father's fist because I dared defend myself, my mother just laughed and said, "That is what you get for being useless." Dad towered over me, snarling, "Maybe now you will learn to keep that gutter mouth shut." They had no idea what was coming. Hit that like button and subscribe. My story might just save someone else. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect family living in a beautiful suburban neighborhood near Boston. Our two-story colonial house with its manicured lawn and white picket fence could have been on a postcard. I did have a few precious good memories scattered like rare gems throughout my childhood. Dad was in an unusually good mood after winning a big case, and Mom had taken her medication correctly that week. They rented a small petting zoo for our backyard and invited all my classmates. For one day, I felt like a normal kid with normal parents who loved me. My father even hugged me that day, something so rare I can count the occurrences on one hand. Another golden memory was our only beach vacation when I was 12. We spent a week at Cape Cod, and for those 7 days, the constant tension seemed to evaporate in the salt air. Dad left his work phone in the hotel room, and Mom actually laughed genuinely instead of the practiced social laugh she usually employed. I collected seashells every morning, and Dad helped me build an elaborate sandcastle that withstood the tide for 2 days. At school, I was always a straight-A student. I had to be. Anything less would trigger consequences I learned to avoid at all costs. But my passion was writing. I filled journal after journal with stories, poems, and dreams of a different life. My English teachers always praised my work, but I never showed my writing to my parents. We met in 7th grade when she was new to our school before I had fully learned to hide everything. She caught me crying in the bathroom one day after my father had thrown away my art project because he deemed it wasteful nonsense. We had sleepovers at her house whenever possible, small respites of normalcy that helped me remember what family could be like. The contrast to my own home was stark and painful. Miss Harrison, my 11th grade English teacher, was the first adult who recognized something in my writing that hinted at my hidden reality. "You have a remarkable talent, Sophia," she told me, her eyes full of concern. "The emotions in your writing feel very authentic. You know you can talk to me if you ever need to, right?" I was not ready to speak the truth aloud, but her recognition of my talent planted a seed of hope. Maybe my words could eventually become my escape. I became adept at creating a public persona that revealed nothing of my private pain. I smiled at the right times, participated in the right extracurricular activities, and maintained the precise level of social engagement that would not arouse suspicion, but also would not invite too much scrutiny. I was friendly but not close with most of my classmates. I attended school events, but always left early with a polite excuse. I became invisible in the most visible way possible, hiding in plain sight. I imagined turning 18 and walking out the door, never looking back. I dreamed of a small apartment somewhere, noisy and vibrant with neighbors who did not know my name and did not care about my comings and goings. I pictured a life where I could speak without calculating every word, where I could laugh loudly without fear, where I could simply exist without constantly monitoring the emotional temperature of those around me. The reality I knew would be more complicated. Even as I dreamed of escape, I understood the invisible chains that bound me to that house. Financial dependence, a lifetime of conditioned fear, and the insidious voice in my head that whispered my parents might be right about me. Maybe I did deserve the treatment I received. Maybe the outside world would be even worse. And despite everything, hope continued to flicker inside me. A tiny flame I protected fiercely against the constant winds trying to extinguish it. Someday, I told myself, someday I would be free. I had always sensed the difference, felt the underlying tension that permeated our house like a toxic gas. But that day crystallized everything. I brought home my report card, nervous but quietly proud. The teacher was notoriously tough, and most students had scored much lower. I thought my parents would be pleased, or at least not upset. I found my father in his home office, surrounded by legal briefs. He scanned the paper slowly, his face darkening when he reached the B+. Do you think the Thompsons settle for less than excellence? My mother appeared in the doorway, attracted by the commotion. Instead of defending me, she simply shook her head. You need to try harder, Sophia, she said coldly. In that moment, I understood I was completely alone in my own home. The control escalated gradually after that incident. My father began checking my phone regularly, reading my text messages and monitoring my calls. My curfew was non-negotiable. 6 o'clock on weekdays and 8 o'clock on weekends with no exceptions. He began vetting my friends, prohibiting me from spending time with anyone he deemed unsuitable or from families he considered beneath our social standing. One particularly humiliating incident occurred during a study group at Olivia's house. My classmates stared in awkward silence as I gathered my things, face burning with shame. Miss Peterson assigned us to work together on the project, I tried to explain. Do not talk back to me, he snapped. I do not want to hear about group projects or study partners. You will study at home where I can monitor your progress. That night, I started my secret diary. In those pages, I wrote everything I could not say aloud, every hurt, every fear, every small and large injustice. I wrote about the unfairness of my parents' rules, my dreams of escape, and increasingly detailed accounts of the escalating abuse. I became skilled at lying, creating elaborate cover stories to explain bruises or my frequent absences from social events. I learned to smile convincingly while saying I could not attend a birthday party because of family obligations, never revealing that the obligation was my father's decree that I stay home. I perfected the art of wearing long sleeves in warm weather and makeup to cover the occasional marks. Through the wall, I could hear my mother sobbing and my father's low, threatening voice. She was trapped too in her own way. That revelation brought a new dimension to my fear. If my mother, an adult with presumably more resources and options than I had, could not escape this situation, what hope did I have? For the first time, I seriously considered running away. It was exhausting, this constant vigilance, but necessary for survival. My mother's behavior became increasingly erratic. I could never predict which version of her I would encounter from one day to the next. Maybe my parents would recognize this milestone, loosen the restrictions a bit, acknowledge my growing maturity. It was a foolish hope, but hope is often foolish in the face of experience. I would survive 2 more years in this house. I would not let them break me. I just had to hold on a little longer. You will apply to Boston University in Suffolk Law, my father announced one evening at dinner, not even phrasing it as a question. Pre-law track. You can live at home and commute. My stomach dropped. The casual way he had planned my entire future without any input from me made me feel physically ill. No New York, no journalism, no escape. My father's face darkened. Journalism, a dying field full of liberal propaganda peddlers. No daughter of mine is wasting my money on such nonsense. Think practically. Journalism is for people who could not get into real professional programs. Experience had taught me that disagreement only led to pain. But something about this moment, about having the next 4 years of my life, maybe my entire future decided without my consent, made something snap inside me. I do not want to be a lawyer, I said, my voice stronger than I intended. I have been researching scholarships, so it would not even cost you anything. The silence that followed was deafening. My father set down his fork with deliberate slowness, a gesture I had learned to fear. Later came 3 hours after, when my mother had gone to bed with her pills and wine. The discussion that followed left me with bruised ribs and a split lip. I learned that he had found the scholarship applications I had hidden in my desk drawer. I learned that defiance would not be tolerated. I learned that dreams were luxuries I was not entitled to. I applied concealer carefully before school, an art I had unfortunately perfected over the years. Mr. Davis, my guidance counselor, noticed something was wrong during our scheduled meeting about college applications. His eyes lingered on the bruise I had failed to completely cover near my jawline. I walked into a door handle yesterday. I am such a klutz sometimes. But fear held me back. And even if someone did, what then? Foster care for a few months until I turned 18? Really, Mr. Davis, everything is fine. I am just stressed about college applications. He nodded slowly. Well, my door is always open. About those applications, have you considered Northwestern? Their journalism program is excellent, and I think you would be a strong candidate for their merit scholarships. I began searching for part-time jobs that I could reach by public transportation. But my father quickly put an end to that plan. Your job is to focus on your studies, he declared, when I tentatively mentioned wanting to work at the local bookstore. I will not have you distracted by minimum wage nonsense when you should be preparing for law school. Other nights she slurred her words and either became weepily affectionate or viciously mean with no middle ground. I had been careless, forgetting about the marks my father had left 2 days before when he shoved me against the staircase railing. Sophia, wait a moment, she said as the other girls filed out to the gymnasium. Fell during hiking with my cousins this weekend. I lied. Tumbled down a rocky section of the trail. She looked skeptical. Always have been. Ask anyone. I forced a laugh, hating how easily the lies came now. She did not press further, but I noticed her watching me more carefully after that. My friendship with Olivia became increasingly difficult to maintain. Her parents are divorced, you know. Broken home, broken values. The irony of his statement would have been laughable if it were not so tragic. Our home was far more broken than Olivia's could ever be. Then came the discovery that would change everything. This alone was not unusual, as my father traveled frequently for work, but the dates caught my attention. He had claimed to be in Chicago that weekend for a conference, but the hotel was in Boston, less than 20 minutes from our house. My father was having an affair. Not because I had any particular reverence for my parents' marriage, which I knew to be as toxic as every other aspect of our household. I had no immediate plans to use it, but its very existence in my mind felt dangerous. That night, I added this new information to my diary, hiding it in my secret spot with extra care. I did not know yet how or if I would ever use it, but in a strange way, it gave me a tiny sense of power in a situation where I had been completely powerless for so long. My carefully constructed plans for escape were being systematically dismantled by my father's iron control. But the diary continued to grow, documenting every incident, every bruise, every cutting word. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and pain, a different emotion was beginning to take root. Not for my benefit, of course, but because appearances mattered. Extended family, my father's law partners, and select neighbors were invited to celebrate the accomplishment of Frank Thompson's daughter, the future law student, the perfect extension of his own success. "So proud of you, sweetheart," she whispered. "Though I hear your father has it all mapped out for you already." "Sophia has already been accepted to Boston University," my father announced over dessert, raising his glass in a toast. Following in the family tradition, pre-law track. We could not be prouder. The guests murmured their approval and congratulations. No one noticed my hands trembling slightly as I raised my water glass in acknowledgement of the toast. "Such a sensible choice," Mrs. Harrington, our neighbor, commented. "So many young people today want to run off to some faraway school and waste their parents' money." My father insisted all gifts be approved by him first, a control tactic disguised as parental supervision. The house felt eerily quiet after the forced joviality of the evening. I began clearing dessert plates from the dining room table while my mother stumbled upstairs to bed, the strain of maintaining her perfect hostess persona having exhausted her. My father loosened his tie and poured himself a scotch in the kitchen, watching me work. "The cleaning service will handle it tomorrow. There is nothing to discuss. The arrangements have been made. I have been accepted to New York University with a partial scholarship. I want to study journalism." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. I applied to other schools. I got into NYU. I swallowed hard but continued. "I am 18 now. Rights." He laughed, a harsh sound entirely devoid of humor. "The roof over your head, the food on your plate, the opportunities you have been given. Or maybe it was simply that I had nothing left to lose. You have provided a prison. You have never asked what I want or who I am. You just decided everything for me." His face contorted with rage, and in that moment, he dropped all pretense of being the respected attorney, the pillar of the community. "After everything I have sacrificed for this family, you ungrateful little. You will go where I tell you," he shouted, punctuating each word with another blow. I tasted blood in my mouth, felt the room spinning around me. Through the haze of pain, I saw my mother standing in the doorway, summoned by the commotion. My father's fist connected with my jaw with a sickening crack that reverberated through my skull. I felt something break inside my mouth. Blood poured from my lips as I collapsed fully to the kitchen tiles. Through swollen eyes, I looked up at my mother, silently pleading for help. Instead, she laughed, a brittle wine-soaked sound. "That is what you get for being useless," she said, swaying slightly in the doorway. "Always thinking you are so special, so different from us. This rebellion ends now." The face that looked back at me from the mirror was almost unrecognizable. My left eye was swollen shut, my lips split in multiple places, and my jaw visibly misaligned. I knew without medical training that my jaw was broken. My parents simply went to bed, secure in the knowledge that I could not tell anyone what had happened. Who would believe me over the respected attorney Frank Thompson? And even if someone did, what would happen to me then? I crawled to my bedroom, each movement sending fresh waves of agony through my body. They had gone too far this time. They thought they had broken me, finally crushed my will completely. But in that moment of extreme pain, I found clarity. Through the haze of pain, I smiled, though the movement sent daggers of agony through my face. They had no idea what was coming. They thought they had won, but they had just set in motion their own downfall. I just had to survive the night. For the next 2 weeks, I existed in a fog of pain. My father refused to take me to a hospital, claiming I had fallen down the stairs and just needed time to heal. My mother provided over-the-counter pain medication that barely took the edge off the agony. But somehow, it clarified my thinking rather than clouding it. During those painful days of recovery, I formulated my plan with methodical precision. I had been researching escape options for years, but always with vague timelines and uncertainty. I would never spend another night in this house once my jaw healed enough for me to execute my plan. Claiming I needed to research summer reading assignments, I convinced my mother to let me visit the public library. No questions, just unconditional support. Years of abuse had taught me that my word alone would not be enough against my father's reputation and connections. I wrote detailed accounts of the graduation night incident and previous abuses in a new diary, which I kept hidden in a hollowed-out book on my shelf. The first time I played back a recording of my father screaming that he would break more than your jaw next time. A chill ran through me at hearing the raw hatred in his voice from an objective perspective. Had I really been living with this monster my entire life? 3 weeks after graduation, when I could speak without excruciating pain, I made a secret visit to my former English teacher, Miss Harrison. I waited until she was alone after class. "Sophia," she exclaimed upon seeing me, her expression shifting from surprise to horror as she took in my still healing face. "My God, what happened to you?" The words poured out of me, halting at first, then in a rush that could not be contained. "I suspected something was wrong," she said softly. "Your writing always had an undercurrent of pain that seemed too real to be fictional. But I never imagined it was this severe." "I was afraid," I admitted. "Afraid no one would believe me. Afraid of him." Miss Harrison helped me connect with Sarah Jenkins, a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases and had herself escaped an abusive marriage in her 20s. "Your documentation is excellent," she told me, examining the photographs and recordings. "And since you are 18, you have more options than a minor would. We can file for a restraining order immediately." "Not yet," I said. "I need more time to prepare. Once I make this move, I can never go back." Sarah understood. She also discovered something unexpected while researching my father. Frank Thompson has been under investigation by the Bar Association for ethical violations, she revealed during our third meeting. Misappropriation of client funds, conflicts of interest. This could explain his escalating violence. This information was both terrifying and useful. My academic record and writing samples were strong enough that the department chair made an exception to include me in the fall semester despite the late application. "They want to help you, Sophia. You just need to hold on a little longer." They would host a dinner party at our home on July 15th, inviting colleagues, friends, and extended family. As the date approached, I finalized every detail. Sarah prepared the legal documents, ready to file for a restraining order the moment I was safely away. My packed bags were hidden at Olivia's house. My evidence was duplicated and stored in multiple secure locations. Miss Harrison arranged for a friend to drive me to New York the day after my escape. The bruises had faded. My jaw had healed enough that the misalignment was only noticeable if you were looking for it, and my resolve had never been stronger. I stood at my bedroom window as dawn broke, watching the neighborhood come to life. But inside this house, an earthquake was about to happen. By this time tomorrow, I would be gone from this place forever, and the carefully constructed facade of the Thompson family would lie in ruins. I was ready. My mother spent the morning directing the catering staff, arranging flowers, and polishing silver that was already gleaming. By 6 o'clock, guests began to arrive. I wore a modest blue dress my mother had selected, my hair arranged to partially cover the lingering evidence of my father's violence. I smiled and nodded at appropriate intervals, playing the perfect daughter one final time. Dinner progressed through multiple courses, my father holding court at the head of the table, accepting compliments and well wishes with practiced humility. "A toast," announced Howard Fitzgerald, my father's senior partner, raising his glass. If only they knew, I thought, mechanically raising my water glass. If only they could see what happens when the front door closes and the masks come off. "I have something for you too, Dad," I said, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. He looked surprised, perhaps because I had never shown initiative in gift-giving before, always signing my name to whatever my mother purchased on my behalf. "Well, this is unexpected," he said with a chuckle that sounded warm to everyone but me. I recognized the dangerous undertone, the implicit question of what I thought I was doing, deviating from the script. "It contains some memories I thought you might want to revisit," I replied. Before he could refuse, I took the drive from his hand and walked to the entertainment center where our large television was connected to a computer system for streaming. The screen filled with my battered face from the night after graduation. A collective gasp rose from the assembled guests. "Try to tell anyone about your little accident, and you will not survive the next one. Do you understand me, you worthless little... You manipulative little liar," he snarled. "Turn that off right now." "Frank, what is going on?" Howard asked, his voice filled with shock and growing suspicion. "Nothing," my father snapped. "My daughter has always had an overactive imagination." "Because of my imagination?" Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. In the confusion, no one moved to answer it. We received a call about a potential domestic violence situation at this address. The officers separated everyone, taking statements in different rooms. She alternated between blaming me for provoking him and claiming she had been too afraid to intervene, her carefully constructed world disintegrating around her. "Frank Thompson, you are under arrest for domestic assault and battery," Officer Ryan stated, reading him his rights as she handcuffed him in front of his colleagues and friends, the ultimate humiliation for a man whose public image had been everything. As they led him toward the front door, he locked eyes with me one final time. I stepped forward, finding strength I never knew I possessed.
"No, Dad.
You are nothing without your facade." The guests departed in shocked silence, the birthday celebration forgotten in the wake of the scandal unfolding before them. I stood in the empty living room surrounded by half-eaten cake and discarded gift wrap, feeling strangely light, as though a physical weight had been lifted from my body. Outside, I could see Olivia waiting in her car as planned, ready to take me to her home for the night before my journey to New York the following day. Before leaving, I walked through the house one final time. This prison that had contained my entire existence for 18 years. I took nothing but the documents I needed, the evidence that would ensure my father could never hurt me again. And the small shell from Cape Cod, a reminder that even in the darkest places, moments of light can exist. At the front door, I paused for one last look. She would not be coming with me to New York. I stepped outside, closing the door firmly behind me, and walked toward Olivia's waiting car without looking back. 1 year later, I sat at a small desk in my New York apartment, watching rain streak down the window as I put the finishing touches on an article for the university newspaper. My tiny studio in Brooklyn was nothing like the spacious bedroom I had left behind in Boston, but every square inch of it was mine, filled with choices I had made, reflecting the person I was becoming rather than the one I had been forced to be. There were nights I woke up drenched in sweat, The phantom sensation of my father's hands around my throat so real I had to turn on all the lights and remind myself he was hundreds of miles away, no longer able to hurt me. There were days when a raised voice in the street or an unexpected touch would send me spiraling into panic, my body remembering what my mind was trying to process. The trauma therapist I saw weekly at the University Counseling Center had helped me understand that recovery was not about forgetting or even necessarily forgiving, but about reclaiming my life from the shadow of abuse. But so does healing. The support group for survivors of family violence became another cornerstone of my healing. Twice a month, I sat in a circle with men and women whose stories echoed parts of mine, whose eyes held the same mixture of pain and determination. Once the first cracks appeared in his carefully constructed image, the entire facade collapsed with stunning speed. Multiple ethics violations came to light as the Bar Association investigation deepened. A former legal secretary revealed a pattern of workplace harassment stretching back years. My medical records, finally obtained when I sought proper treatment for my improperly healed jaw, provided irrefutable evidence of the physical abuse I had endured. Frank Thompson, once the respected attorney and community pillar, was sentenced to 8 years in prison for domestic violence, financial crimes, and witness intimidation. His law license was permanently revoked. My mother's journey took a different path. "I failed you in every way a mother could fail a child," she wrote. "But I want you to know that I am trying to understand how I became the kind of woman who would watch her husband hurt her child and do nothing." I read the letter several times before placing it in a drawer. I was not ready to respond, not sure if I ever would be. My first published article appeared in the university newspaper at the beginning of spring semester, a piece about recognizing the warning signs of domestic violence in teenage relationships. The editor asked me to make it a regular column, focusing on different aspects of relationship dynamics and personal safety. Standing before classrooms of teenagers, seeing recognition flash in certain eyes, I understood that my experiences, however painful, had given me a voice that could potentially help others avoid similar situations. Miss Harrison visited me in New York during spring break, bringing news of Olivia, who had started college in Boston but stayed far away from my former neighborhood. "That is exactly what strength is," she replied. Mr. Davis, my high school counselor, sent an email expressing both regret that he had not been able to help more and pride in how I had ultimately helped myself. I made new friends in New York slowly and cautiously at first, testing the waters of trust with tiny steps. Our relationship developed with glacier-like slowness, each step forward deliberate and discussed. When I finally told him my full story, 6 months into our friendship and 2 weeks into tentative dating, he listened without interruption, without judgment, without the pity I had feared. "Thank you for trusting me with this," was all he said when I finished, reaching for my hand with a gentleness that brought tears to my eyes. I even started a small foundation to provide emergency funds for young adults escaping abusive homes, naming it Next Chapter, to emphasize that surviving abuse was not the end of anyone's story. The pain had been real, the damage significant. I still carried scars, visible and invisible. But I also carried strength I never knew I possessed, wisdom earned through terrible experience, and a profound understanding of both human cruelty and resilience. Not in silencing others but in finding and using my own voice. Not in creating fear but in overcoming it. But now I used it to speak truths, to tell stories that mattered, to advocate for those still trapped in situations similar to what I had escaped. My story is a reminder that even after the most devastating storms, the sun can and will shine again. And if you know someone who might be in a situation like I was, share this video. You have the power to write your own next chapter.